You're listening to Season 2 of the Humans of AI Stories Not Stats podcast, where Devi Parekh and Dhruv Batra talk to AI researchers to try and understand who they are as people, what their life is like, what they think about, what they're insecure about, what they get excited about. Questions that reveal the stories of their day-to-day lives. In this episode, Dhruv talks to Andrew Fitzgibbon, who is a partner researcher at Microsoft. He talks about his love for formula racing and skiing, his fascination with coding and prototyping, his optimistic attitude towards life, and a lot more. For more information on the podcast and episodes, check out the Humans of AI website linked in the description. And without any further ado, let's get right to the conversation.
Hi, Dhruv.
Hey, Andrew.
Oh, cool. Wow. Didn't need to fix audio.
That's a first, I guess.
Yeah.
Every single meeting, the first few minutes are, can you hear me?
Yeah, that's kind of amazing. Yeah.
Okay. How was the race?
It was very exciting. It's it's been kind of one-sided for the last few years, so it was interesting that there's now two different teams competing. So
I see. I used to follow Formula One in the early 2000s, like 2000, like back when Michael Schumacher was still racing. It's a long time ago. I haven't kept up with the.
So today was the debut race of his son,
Oh,
Mick
wow.
Schumacher. Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so there we go.
Okay. I feel old.
Yeah.
I see. What team is he racing for?
Oh, Haas, which is the only American team in the race.
Yeah, I caught the documentary on F1. That was on Netflix. That came out.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So that's how I.
Yeah. I haven't followed much of that, but I followed a few episodes. It's all too traumatic to watch the stresses they're under.
Yeah, it felt a bit over dramatized, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's I'm sure they're under a lot of stress.
Yeah.
No, I like it because the obvious thing, right? Like sort of individual human skill and large engineering team. It's sort of a trade-off of engineering versus sort of individual ability. So
yeah, and with interpersonal dynamics mixed in of two people in the same team, and then engine power.
Yeah. So 2000, I can't remember what the that's 2000. Gosh, that's a long time ago, right? That's
So I like Rubens Barrichello used to race alongside Michael Schumacher, and they had a few controversial decisions where they asked him to hold back just so Michael could pick up some more points in the.
Yep. Yeah. Gosh, yeah. I didn't know you were that old, but
yeah. Okay. Well, Andrew Fitzgibbon, welcome to Humans of AI. Thank you for doing this.
Delighted to be here. Thank you very much.
As you know, this is being recorded. I have a sequence of questions for you. Some are light and may not require a lot of thinking. Others may require a bit more consideration, so feel free to pause and take your time. We don't have to go over every question. We can skip if you'd like. But when in doubt, if you can err on the side of being open, transparent, vulnerable, we would appreciate it. Sound good?
Yep, sounds fantastic.
Okay, so what were you doing right before this call? And I should note that we're talking on a Sunday, so this isn't a regular day.
Yes, so I'm afraid I had to defer the start of the call a little bit because I got the time zones right, but I didn't realize that the Formula One would start an hour later my time. So I've just been watching the first Formula One Grand Prix of the season.
Yeah, is Australian the first? Is that still the case?
No, this is in Bahrain, and it was super exciting. Yeah, so the hottest young talent, Max Verstappen, is against the by now wildly elder statesman Sir Lewis Hamilton, and it went right down to the last lap. It was very exciting.
Awesome. What is your daily routine like?
Just daily routine: wake up, make porridge for the family, drop my daughter off to school, and to sort of collapse my whole life into a day, there's um, various types of meeting with people. The sort of I love brainstorming meetings, so I might sort of have you know a 30-minute meeting with a half hour slot at the end, a half hour kind of buffer slot if we need to really one-on-one kind of nail something down. And it's been really interesting doing that fully remotely. I thought I would use the whiteboard a lot. We don't as much, but we do an awful lot of typing into a shared document or typing into the chat, and that's kind of cool because it's super precise. So the stuff I'm working on at the moment is a lot to do with programming language design, compilers, and so on. So you can really just sort of tap in a couple of lines of code, tap it back, and it's been really interesting to see that. Yeah. So daily routine is some sort of brainstorming meetings, just trying to solve problems, trying to figure out, project directions. And then luckily I'm still in the position where I get to write some code sometimes, right? So there's, a bunch of code review, and occasionally I'll, there are some things that when you're old and experienced, you can just do, it's easier to explain with a small prototype than maybe with a lot of whiteboarding or something. So I might try and do sort of a quick proof of concept or toy example, and say, right, this is the kind of idea, and then we can discuss that. So I'm really lucky to have that, sort of highly technical part of my day still.
Fascinating. What's, just out of curiosity, what language do you love prototyping in?
Oh, wow. So I'm beginning to have opinions about Python style. So that's definitely a level I've passed this year. I've traditionally been, I still love it when I get to do C++. It's almost never the right choice for a quick prototype. But for example, if you want to prove something about maybe why Python is slow, you might have to prototype a C++ implementation of the same thing and just check, right? Is it inherently slow or is it a Python thing? I've been doing a lot of Julia recently. I really enjoy that. That's,
Yeah, I've been hearing more and more machine learning people talk about Julia.
Yeah, no, Julia's really exciting. It's so funny because, I tried to kick a MATLAB habit for a long, long time. And I guess 10 years ago, I tried to switch to Python, and I really was kind of stuck with the MATLAB. But Julia was enough it was sort of beautiful enough that I easily switched over. And then I've been, in the last couple of years, I've been doing quite a bit of Haskell, which is fun. I think Haskell's kind of like the Latin of programming languages. Everybody kind of wishes they knew it, but no one is actually going to be bothered to do it. But I'm working with some real Haskell experts. I mean, Simon Peyton Jones, who's a sort of god of programming languages and an inventor of Haskell. So that's what they use. That's what makes them most productive. So I need to learn it to catch up.
Fascinating. And I take it from your answers that it's really the coding time and the one-on-one discussions that are some of the favorite times of your day.
Yeah, I mean, it's all in the area of solving problems, inventing things, and the way to solve problems is to understand deep down what's going on. And I find those tools, discussing with others and actually trying to write prototypes, the best way to understand.
Fair enough. What's the least favorite part of your day?
Oh gosh, least favorite. Oh, you make sort of silly mistakes sometimes. You might, anytime you have to choose between things that two different people want, person A wants A, person B wants B, and if you're going to choose between them, there's always the worry that you're going to do it wrong. And of course, if you do get it wrong, and you hope to do that as little as possible, that's not a great day, right? When you think, I really should, person B was right, I should have followed them. But based on the evidence I had at the time, I thought person A was the person to follow.
And a follow-up question to that. Do you find yourself falling susceptible to the middle ground fallacy that the truth must always lie somewhere in the middle anytime there is a conflict?
That's really interesting. So I really don't like the phrase, let's agree to disagree. All right, I absolutely want to find a kind of an axiomatic point of difference, right? So the point of difference might simply be, you know, eh, someone might say, I believe we really need to make our languages work well for graph neural networks. And person A might say, yes, graph neural networks will be the future, or no, they won't. And you really try and sort of paint out the future, or I mean, to take a less sort of concrete example, I love all the discussions about driverless cars where we all explain to each other slowly and carefully how it's definitely not going to be possible for 2 years, 5 years, 7 years. We all have positions on that, and it's really fun to try and just tease out what are the axiomatics under that, and what historical lessons can we use to make our decisions, or to I don't know if that quite answers the question, but it seems related.
Yeah, but I think that covered it enough. Do you set an alarm in the morning?
No. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she never fails to wake at well, she wakes at 6:30, and she comes and collects us at 7 o'clock or 7:30 or whatever she decides. So I haven't set an alarm for a long time.
I like the verb description there, that she comes and collects the rest of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's porridge to make or whatever. There's stuff to be done. So that you need adults for.
Then does the common household phenomena happen in reverse, where she'll come and try to wake you up and you'll ask for 10 more minutes and then 10 more minutes?
It literally does. I only get away with 3 more minutes. 3 is considered acceptable.
I see.
But maybe I might stretch it to 5 sometimes. But yeah, I wouldn't risk stretching it to 7.
Are you a planner, or do you operate more on just gut feeling and going with the flow?
Oh wow. I think it's almost a cliche around my teams that there is a plan, but it's in Andrew's head, and it doesn't get put out. I'm very much into contingent plans or conditional plans, right? So in fact, I guess one of the things I'm proudest of is that someone wrote a book. Bill Buxton, a user interface designer, wrote a book, and as one of his chapter heading quotes, he used a quote of mine, which is sadly inaccurate, but it's kind of right, which is the concept that making a plan and sticking to it guarantees a suboptimal solution. Right? Because you're just using the information you had at the point of time that you made a plan. And so it doesn't guarantee, because of course you could have been right, but it's pretty much guarantees. It's a bound on
especially in a dynamic world.
Exactly, which hopefully you're in, right? Because if you weren't, you weren't doing interesting stuff. I mean, there's a whole bunch of quotes about plans. What is it? No plan survives contact with the enemy. Et cetera.
No battle plan survives contact with the enemy, and plans are useless, but planning is essential.
Exactly. So that last one. So you really have to have an idea, which is what's going to happen. But it's also a few years ago we did a proper plan. So we were doing 3D modeling, and we were doing hand tracking for the HoloLens. So we had a small CPU, a tiny CPU, like an Apple Watch size CPU, and we had some code, and we knew that was probably the code that was going to work, but it was 1,000 times too slow. And I remember we called it the 39 steps. It was a beautiful, I think it was John Taylor, Tom Cashman, a few other people in my office on a whiteboard. And we wrote down all the code that we hoped we didn't have to write to make this work. So there's and then each of those things that we thought we called it 39 steps, right? There were just stuff like, do we need to implement a Cholesky factorization that understands the sparseness in the bottom 16 by 16 of the matrix? Because it's such a hassle, but it was going to be a 50% speed increase, maybe, but was it going to matter? And then every column was sort of P0, P1, P2. So it was, we're almost certainly going to have to do this. we're probably going to have to do this, and we really hope we don't have to do this. And it was just an amazing matrix. And then we added it all up, and it was like, holy smokes, there's 25 person years of work here. It was that was after we multiplied by 10, our estimates. And I haven't gone back, but we weren't far off. And sort of 3 years later or 4 years later, the thing got released, and yeah. So what's the answer there? So the answer is planning is such fun, and I guess what I'm terrible at, what I'm really bad at, is scheduling, not planning, deciding who should do what when. I'm terrible at that. I'm always like, okay, well, what's the next thing we need to do?
Including yourself, you find yourself difficult to schedule according to the plan that you just made?
I don't properly, I mean, it's interesting as well when you're doing, if you got a product release, that's fine. You kind of pick a date, and especially with HoloLens, there's hardware as well. So, it's all very, some people who really, really are scheduling are working over there, and you have to fit in with them. So, you just make that work. And as any computer vision person will know, when there's a paper deadline, magically stuff gets done by the paper deadline. But sometimes we're in a mode where it's almost like journal paper mode, right? So it's a bit like it's not going to go in the product until it's proved, and that really is just deliver it when it's done. I find that really hard to because what I want to do is, I'm also super keen that I don't believe in 80-hour weeks, right? I really believe in, you work at a rate that you can sustain, as long, and you love it. So it is interesting to try to plan those sort of no deadline situations. And I think it's no secret that I'm not very good at it, but luckily I've got people around me who are better at it.
Are you competitive, Andrew?
Yes, pretty much. I've become a pretty good loser, but yeah, I go-karting is something where I'll really just get race face on, and I do it only once a year. It's not like I do it all the time, but it's absolutely sort of total focus. Ski racing, I love. It's just, again, absolutely mind emptied of any other concept other than, get through the gates. And this is why I keep pausing about the question, because I don't particularly care about beating the other people, but I like passing a benchmark. And if there are other people against whom I can benchmark, then of course I much prefer to be, past the benchmark and in first place than behind. But
yeah, there's this distinction. I don't know if I'm using the right terms, but between active competitions and races, right? Like, but it's not zero sum. Other people's losses don't hurt you, don't help you directly, but them setting a faster time gives you something to shoot for. So yeah, as is
interesting. So you mean like sort of Strava style, like not competition but competition, or?
No, I actually mean like in a race, you don't actually get to interfere with any other person on the track. So it's not like their losses are directly your wins. It's not zero sum in that nature. In fact, somebody else or a competitor setting a better time just sets a higher benchmark for you. So it's
Indeed, and if two competitors accidentally paced you, if one went too fast early on and then one went too slow early, or whatever, then that might be helpful.
Yeah.
That's funny actually, because we were talking about Formula One earlier, and I, before this exciting race, I was thinking, oh, Formula One's getting really boring. And recently, I watched the America's Cup yachting, which now is exactly the same. Amazing engineering, like beautiful engineering, and again, sports people now in little teams. But there's a funny factor, because every race is just one-on-one. It's just two boats in every race, and it's absolutely understood that you need to beat the other team, not race your own race. I mean, sometimes you race your own race, but there's and I guess that's super competitive.
Is there a rejection or a failure that hurt particularly bad?
Oh, blimey. That's that's a good one. Um, uh, that's funny. So there, it's I hadn't looked at the questions before. I kept saying, "I'll look at the questions." No, I'll wing it. No, I'll look at the questions. No, I'll wing it. And eventually I didn't look at the questions. So that's brilliant. I'm glad it's fresh. So two things jumped to mind. One was a job interview at Oxford for a, I guess you would call it a professorship or lectureship, essentially a permanent job, right? You know the way it works in Oxford. You get the job and you're there until you're 95, or you know, and um, that was interesting. It was in a computer science department. And I'm sure there were many reasons I didn't get it, but I just remember being asked something like, "What's your favorite data structure?" And
At a
it's computers.
faculty, yeah.
Yeah, or maybe tell me about it. Yeah, I think it was, "What's your favorite data structure?" I think that's a totally fair question, by the way. I have no objection to that question. I think it's sense. I used to ask people, "What's your favorite algorithm?" But then people said it was like a hard question, or maybe it was anyway. They asked me, "What's your favorite data structure?" And I was thinking I should say graph, right? Graph is the obvious thing to say, but I didn't. I said matrix vector. I didn't even say tensor because I find it a bit poncy, and meaning pretending to be posh. And I said matrix vector, and it was just I could just see the whole thing tumbling tumbling away as I fumbled this answer. And later I went back and said drat. So that hurt, but then that reminds me that you know, lots of people I know apply for jobs, particularly in academia or grants, right? Where you don't get it. And I do find it reassuring to think that's because somebody better got it. Somebody better suited for that job at that time or that thing at that time got it. And that's, in a sense, the zero sumness of it is kind of helpful there. It's like, okay, so somebody else got that. I'll do something else. I don't feel too rejected in a sense. I may feel I've made a mistake, and maybe feel I helped them to make the wrong decision, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe the other person was great. Um, and then the other, I said there were two answers or two times where rejection hurt. There is one paper, I won't tell you what it is, um, you know, where where we got a poster and the same thing got an oral. And that's still like sort of, still just kind of slightly rankles. It doesn't matter, but it was just funny. But we've been lucky, right? We had a paper that didn't get a poster, got properly rejected. And that was great because when we rewrote it, it was much, much better. So, I don't want to go on about paper rejections, but I just, as you mentioned it, there is one that I still remember.
It's an interesting facet of just academic life that over perhaps even a substantial career, these things can still continue to pinch.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what came into my mind when you said rejections. So.
Yeah. And the converse, is there an achievement that felt particularly good?
Oh gosh, it's kind of like, now that I think about it, it's a no-brainer, and it kind of isn't an achievement. It was when I got my fellowship at Oxford. I got a 5-year kind of do what you like, Royal Society University Research Fellowship, 1999, I think. And Andrew Zisserman had helped me with the application, and we put it in, and some tremendous people wrote in support of me, that I was kind of amazed would. But that arrived, and that was really, I think, that was pretty high level of elation. If you look at my CV, you won't see that particularly celebrated anywhere, right? You'll see, prizes and stuff, but that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I imagine the early wins and the early happiness moments linger on and have disproportionate impact because they had a high marginal value at that time.
Yes, I'll tell you what's been pretty exciting recently. I had my first paper in PLDI, Programming Languages Design and
Mhm.
Implementation, and I was as giddy as a PhD student with their first paper. You know, it was like, because I've been kind of shifting away. I mean, I've always had interest in compilers and stuff, and that was pretty exciting. That was like, okay, maybe I am able to do this other thing.
That's awesome. How do you usually make difficult decisions? Are there certain lines of thinking, so frameworks that you approach problems by?
Interesting. I often say I think really slowly. Like I often need to say, okay, that's going to be all weekend, and this is something that I would do at the weekend, right? As I said earlier, I do like to separate work and non-work life, but I do like to just let things settle for a while. So that's strategy one, is wait, right? And that's not always available. Sometimes a difficult decision needs to be made in a hurry, or whatever problem you're trying to solve will get worse. Um, so first of all, wait. Um, and then second of all, just so I'm really bad at chess, because I kind of think forward the move I want to make, and then I'm supposed to think about all these other lines of attack, and I can't be bothered because, like, there's this one that I really like, so, and I keep going back to that one instead of doing the other ones that I should be doing. So I do try and force myself to play forward the different rollouts and try to say, right, if this happens, then this happens, then this happens. Right, stop thinking about that. Now say, if I didn't take step A, so kind of formalize the tree search, I think, is I need to do that. Otherwise, I'll just keep thinking of the thing that hopefully will work, and that's no good.
Do you have an internal monologue? Do you talk to yourself?
Um, it's funny. I was sort of walking somewhere the other day, and I was remembering that when I was younger, I definitely, and I know this is terrible. I shouldn't admit this, but I was thinking there are people who narrate their lives in their heads as if as if the the 50-year-old man loped easily down the street, and then I was thinking, I'm glad I haven't done that for a while. Although clearly I was doing that at the point when but I was remembering when I was younger, there was a lot of that. I think that's what you might mean.
Well, so there's the third person narration, but there's also just thinking through language or just thinking through sentences.
Yes, so when I'm writing a paper, I I still like to try to do it all in one sitting. Right, I'm no longer like literally the night before, but I like the idea that I'm going to start at the, this is totally the wrong thing to do. And by the way, I don't do this for theory sections. So when I'm writing a paper, I write down equation 1, equation 2, equation 3. Those are like really important. They have to be right. They have to be just the right level of granularity. Um, and I write explicatory bits and pieces, but the kind of the whole intro and the whole quite a lot of the text I just play forward in my mind for weeks beforehand, sort of playing, and those are real sentences, right? And I think those sentences are part of a thought process. I mean, clearly they're intended to go down on the page, so they're different from sentences. And then if I'm trying to solve like a vision problem, I think it is probably more geometry. I mean, obviously, I've worked in geometry a lot, so that fits naturally. I also, I think in code quite a lot. I think people would joke that I sometimes speak in code. I mean, like computer code. I definitely think what is the execution sequence that will achieve,
Interesting.
what's going to happen in the computer.
And you find that you can move bits and pieces of code around, and like you can do that in a functional, abstract manner.
I think so. I think probably that's the thing that I'm, sort of weirdly best at, is understanding how computers work. That's like I have a real feel for what the computer's doing. Um, and so I said code, but the code isn't really there. But it's just kind of the evolution of the data structures over time. Let's
Hmm.
say,
Hmm.
or yeah.
And you already alluded to this, but it sounds like you do a lot of visual thinking as well. You have pictures in your mind and geometry, and like you're able to.
I
Is that a
think so.
common framework?
Yeah, I think so. I remember when I was working with AZ with Andrew Zisserman, he's like totally pictures in mind, and there's a fantastic tool we have, which is called mathematics and algebra and symbolic mathematics, where I just remember thinking, okay, well, I can't think it through. I'm going to have to just do a derivation, and that's on paper, and it has to be on paper. And I could never understand how Stephen Hawking could do that in his head. Um, so I don't want to say that symbolic mathematics is a second class citizen, because I think it's too often said, oh, you can't make any progress unless you can visualize it. I mean, we have fantastic tools for helping us think through things too big for our brains, and code is even better, right? Mathematics has the disadvantage that it's ambiguous, poorly specified, means different things to different people. It's a terrible tool, mathematics. Whereas
I'm sure mathematicians would disagree that it's
I know.
ambiguous, that it's a
Yeah, yeah.
terrible
Well,
tool.
um, look at equation one of, 100 computer vision papers. It's often wrong, right? Even in accepted papers. Now, what do I mean by wrong? I just mean, oh, this variable on the left hand side wasn't, used on the right hand side, or this, these terms on the right hand side are not defined anywhere above here in the document, right? There's no, it's just, but hey, we all know what we mean, let a Markov random field be or whatever. So whereas if you do that to a computer, it'll say, yeah, sorry, I don't know what I is. And you'll say, stupid computer, it's an integer, right? That I'm using to. It's like, thanks, okay, thanks, I understand you now. Calm down, says the computer. I just wanted to know what it was. And that's what I mean. I love it that code is utterly unambiguous. It's unambiguous in the sense that it does the thing that it says it was going to do. And so toy examples, as I mentioned earlier, a key part of how I think about things. Trying to think of a good toy example is sometimes a geometric question.
Fascinating. And what do you tend to think about when you're not actively trying to think about something? What goes on at the back?
Um, Probably skiing. Uh, you know, um, um, I do a lot of stupid puns. Um, there's a lot of stupid wordplay that goes on in my head. I'd say that's the default cogs turning noise.
Want to give us an example?
And I don't, and I forget them. So if I think of one, if I think of one later, um,
Sure, anytime during
yeah,
this conversation, feel free to.
yeah. No, because I've got some, that I'm really proud of. Yeah, I could look at I have a WhatsApp with 3 or 4 like-minded friends where we share them. So I could possibly look at that later.
It has got to be the world's most glorious WhatsApp thread ever, which is puns going back and forth.
Terrible, terrible puns, typically.
But to an audience that appreciates it. So,
Yes, indeed.
how do you recharge or take a break?
Um, I'm quite good at watching TV. I will watch TV, quite happily for 3 hours of an evening, and I'll watch, kind of whatever. I used to watch more sci-fi. Now I'm just bored with Deus Ex Machina, inconsistent worlds. Uh, I I do like things that kind of change how we look at narrative. So, Westworld, which is kind of what if there were perfect VR, is really interesting. Because the whole question about morality inside and outside. Um, same question in Snow Crash. how do you damage somebody or kill somebody at the other end of a information link, um, um, and and sorry, I mean, I watch a lot of TV, but books that play with these ideas are always interesting. What have we not watched recently? I like. Do you have Call My Agent over there? I guess everyone has it now. It's a French TV series about
I haven't seen it,
theater
but
agents.
might
Yeah,
be.
yeah. So there's no playing around with narrative there. It's just fun.
Okay, okay. Are you happy with the number of close friends you have?
Are you happy with the number of close friends you have? So the way here's a problem solving. So I would ask myself, this is a very common thing you hear from me in a meeting. So do I want more close friends or do I want fewer? Is how I try to answer that question, right?
Mhm.
And what would I do with fewer close friends? No, I think I definitely don't want fewer close friends. I think, and do I want more? Yeah, yeah, and um, those of us who have had children, it's a sort of key point in life when a new set of friends come in, typically, because there's some, at least in Britain, and I'm sure in most countries, there are social arrangements so that you meet all the other new parents and the school parents, and that's really kind of interesting because you get new, very close friends there. Um, and I guess maybe many of my close friends would say yes. Well, if he, uh, I don't, I don't devote huge amounts of efforts to keeping in touch with people. So my friends will, longtime friends will receive a random 2-line email after 3 years, and I still call that person a close friend, and then we'll have a sputter of discussion, which will be great fun, and then we'll get it back in touch again in 2 or 3 years. That seems to me worth keeping.
What are you insecure about?
Um, uh, I still say stupid stuff all the time. I'm just not that good at kind of, you know, toning down a sort of general ebullience and excitement. And, sorry, and this is, of course, me trying to put a positive spin on it. But I just, you know, if I want to make a point, I might make it way too strongly, and then everyone's like, "Okay, I get your point, but I'm scared. I don't like it." So that's something that I really thought with age I would get better at, but not really.
Do you think you're average, above average, or below average happy compared to people around you?
I think I'm probably high above average. I think that I'm kind of during COVID lockdown, I remember I was saying in some meeting, "Look, I hate to be that guy, but look at all the positives." I am that guy. Look at all the
Okay.
positives.
Yeah, I think that decisively answers that question.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, Devi was pretty happy with the work from home arrangement. Like she just likes being comfortable in the home and not having to deal with the commute and the temperature. Yeah, so you have at least a fellow compatriot.
Yeah, but also, I mean, there were positives, right? I mean, the fact that so it's Sunday today. So last night we had a oh yeah, get together with a bunch of people from all over this time zone, and we may as well all have been together. Um, I love it in work meetings that everyone is the same size.
Hmm.
That all the videos are exactly the same size. That I can see everybody the same. There's no one at the back of the room, the front of the room.
Hmm.
Um, I love and therefore I love all remote meetings because anyone who is remote is completely present in the same way. So, I work in England for Microsoft, based in Redmond, in your time zone.
Mhm.
Um, and, previously we would be like these sort of disembodied voices coming out from behind the slides. I don't know if you remember, but, when you're on a
Mhm.
Zoom or Teams call, um, often the slides are occupying the full screen in the meeting room, so you're completely disembodied. I think that equalization has just been fantastic for remote workers, of which we have always been one, being a satellite of another organization. I think it'll be interesting. I haven't yet sparked up any really substantial outside of Microsoft collaborations of that form, but I just think the more we stay all remote for most meetings, I think the more we will, reduce travel, get more ideas from more places. I think there are a bunch of positives coming from there.
And if you had to make a prediction about the future, do you think that equality will survive?
I don't know. I think, my prediction is, we all say, oh yeah, I'll work like 2 days from home and 3 days in the office. And I think what'll happen is either we'll go in one day and never come out, I'll go in one Monday and I'll just come out on Friday, or and it'll be completely back to normal. I think I will, even in the office. I think this is clear in my mind. I think we will have daily stand-ups, one-on-ones, a lot of meetings. I think we'll still do all remote from adjacent, desks or offices. Why? Because number one, equality of the people. Everyone has a keyboard and monitor. This means that if we have a meeting of 5 of us, and I kind of need you there for your expertise, or because I might need to ask you a question, I'm perfectly happy to have you there, like, just low level monitoring the meeting, maybe, but you're still getting useful work done. It means you can quickly flip the meeting to something like a debugging session, right? So, chat. Oh, I'm having this problem. My PyTorch versions are interacting badly. You can just quickly screen share and say, all right, this is what I've done. And I just think that's going to remain valuable. I think the old meetings where someone jumps up and does the whiteboard causes a lot of phase out from the people who aren't actively doing the whiteboarding. So I think I can't make a prediction about where my atoms will be at home or in the office, but I am going to make the prediction that there will still be a lot of these all virtual meetings.
Fair enough. We'll find out hopefully in some time.
Yeah.
What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us may not guess?
Oh, yeah, you all know I'm a ski fanatic. My grandmother was a movie star.
Wow.
That's in the 40s. So she played with Rock Hudson and James Mason and Stuart Granger and these people. You notice that actresses in the 40s are named by the men they played with. So this is an accident of the time. But
yeah. What kinds of movies was she in?
I think there was pretty standard career trajectory then, of like, you work on the stage. She was in Dublin, I'm from Ireland. And you kind of do the running style of movies. So there's one about Christopher Columbus. There was one about Captain Boycott, the Irish landowner who gives us the term boycott. And then there was some really, there you go. And there were some really interesting ones. There was one called Odd Man Out, which is a movie, people will know it, which is about the IRA, the sort of 1940s sort of civil war in Northern Ireland, and that's an interesting portrayal. And she's also in one of the few. I quite like a really dark, sad movie. I'm kind of keen on that. But she's in one that's so dark and sad that I've never been able to see to the end of it, which is by Edgar Dmytryk, one of the early McCarthy sufferers. And that is just dismal life in New York in the Depression. So a range of stuff.
And what is something about the world that surprises you?
It's interesting how bad we are I'm going to say at making predictions with sort of high confidence. So here's my theory about what's going to happen climate-wise over the next 50 years.
Yeah, let's hear it.
There's going to be a single sort of soliton-like event, right? So something bad will happen. Greenland will start to shift, and then the whole thing will slip off, right? And then, almost COVID style, there will be a massive turnaround of human activity, and humans will sort themselves out somehow, right? We have such high confidence when we say, oh, humans can't, you can't expect humans to change, I don't know, live underground or whatever it is, move all their houses away in 2 generations. And yet, I have something now which I call the best graph. You can find it later and insert it. This is Hans Rosling. It's from Hans Rosling, but it's an easy graph to find. Human fertility rate over the last 100 years dropped from 5 to 2. Okay. So humans have 2.5 times fewer children now than they did 100 years ago. Now, obviously, there's a bunch of other stuff, right? So child mortality dropped. So there's like reason to, but that bare number, and that's worldwide, right? That's sort of ignoring that's mixing richer, poor, developed. That fundamental claim, humans could drop their fertility rate, something fundamental about them, by 2.5x, and the 2.5x, the 2x reduction, the quickest 2x reduction is probably over 20-30 years, from the 40s to the 70s. So I think humans are just remarkably malleable, changeable, and we don't give the humans credit for that. So yeah. Clearly, if all humans decided to further reduce their reproduction rate, the planet would be in great shape. The humans wouldn't be for a while, but the planet would be.
The humans are remarkably malleable, yet remarkably unaware of their own malleability.
Yes, and remarkably confident that the one thing you can't do is change human nature. So an ambitious. You sometimes see somebody saying, "Here's my ambitious plan to reduce air travel." Right, and I think that if you follow my ambitious plan, you'll reduce air travel by 15% over the next 10 years. Right, and to me, that's not an ambitious plan. Right, that's nothing. Right, an ambitious plan is 5x over the next 10 years. Right, what does that plan look like? I don't know. Right, it's got to be something to do with video conferencing. But whatever that plan is, and so we say ambitious, and then we say tiny numbers. And again, I think we're just forgetting how malleable humans can be.
What do you strongly suspect but have no proof of? Like, what are your conspiracy theories?
Oh, cool. I don't care whether P equals NP, because I'm really, really, really interested in what happens in practice, and therefore, I know this isn't quite the answer, but it's sort of related, because I strongly suspect P is in NP, but not in any. Sorry, I strongly suspect P not equal to NP, but not in any interesting way. Right. What I'm much more interested in is, can I solve a million variable mixed integer program? Well, we know we can if the million variables are arranged 1,000 by 1,000 in an image, and because we did that 10 years ago in computer vision, or 20 years ago in computer vision. I see integer programming problems now where 10,000 variables is way too many. They take forever. So anyway, so that's something I strongly suspect, but I don't care about. I strongly suspect anything else. Yeah, we'll see.
What is something you've changed your mind about recently or in distant past?
Oh, that's easy. I used to believe that what you're supposed to do is write down the optimization problem, find the best minimum you can, ideally the global minimum, or as fast as you can, right? And then if you don't like the answer, change the optimization problem. Okay. Right, so change your regularizer to L1, or change your an L1 plus an L2, right? What you don't do, I used to believe, is think, oh, I'll just give the gradient a little trim over here and over here because it's getting a bit hairy, and yeah, maybe I'll just divide all the weights by 1.004 every time, except for those really big ones, which I'll divide by 17. Uh, so you know,
And,
um,
and you imagine whoever is doing this to also have that particular accent that you just
yeah. Probably, yeah, and the hand movement and the little sort of Swedish chef kind of,
yeah.
actions, um, and that the reason is that then you see because I got myself into the safe place, right? Define your optimization problem, find the optimum as fast as you can. And obviously, the reason is it's much easier to think about that, right? You could just use the geometry of the minimum as the thing to think about. You don't need to, it's easy on the brain. So we know now that, of course, you should use SGD, when you've got roughly IID or when you can roughly IIDize when you've got a sum of thingies, you should probably use some sort of SGD. We know now that what actually matters overall is what results you can reliably achieve in what amount of time, and highfalutin principles like define the problem and then solve it don't actually match reality. And I still much prefer to add lambda w squared to the objective than to have
Weight
a line
decay.
saying weight decay.
Yeah.
I guess I don't really have a good idea for what I mean by dropout. How I do that in a principled way. So that's I've given up that high mindedness, and now I mix it in with a bit of gradient trimming.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I have to agree. I've gone through that journey myself. There's actually an interesting philosophical parallel to this. I find myself being particularly utilitarian at times and saying that so the philosophy that I ascribe to is, if someone finds a strategy that you do not like, you do not blame the person, you blame the game. If the game allows for a cheating strategy, then the person who finds it is not at fault. The game is at fault because clearly your objective is allowing for it. So you go back and you change your objective. But what the history of machine learning and like SGD is now teaching us, well, it seems like how we go about solving these problems is an easier handle on these, rather than first fixing all objective functions so that then we can make a claim about the minimum.
Yes, it's interesting because it's interesting the use of the word easier there, because of course it's kind of easy to think about it's like curing symptoms rather than curing the disease, like trimming the gradient, adding weight decay. These things, they're easy to think about, but they're not easy to play forward. So it's harder to kind of predict, what's happening, to describe what's happening. But but they're easier to think about. It's like one of my current bugbears is discount and reinforcement learning. It's like gamma is 1 is the problem I actually want to solve, right? I want to solve my undiscounted fixed horizon. I want everything to be right, and this crazy discount is, if and people say, oh, it's there to manage uncertainty about the future. It's like, yeah, we have probability distributions, we know how to manage uncertainty about the future, but I know that I kind of suspect that the same thing is true here, that it's just things work better that way. But I don't want to fall into the gap or the trap of things work better that way, so never don't question the status quo, right?
Yeah, ultimately, wherever we converge, somebody has got to do the hard work of realizing that weight decay is just the same as negative lambda and then norm square. Like somebody's got to make that equivalence, and then we'll be happy.
Yeah, probably, but maybe not. Maybe the world would never have been better if people made that equivalence. Maybe maybe it would have been fine to just proceed with weight decay. But no, I mean, I totally, I think we're very aligned on this, right? It's easier to write down what you want to happen rather than how it's going to happen. But we've had to include both.
How do you imagine your retirement?
Oh, I see. Now that's quite easy. I'll just be a ski bum. I will. Yeah. So I'm 52. My daughter is 10. So when I'm 60, she'll be 18. That seems like a reasonable point to consider, moving to a mountain hut or whatever it is. And um, obviously, I think most academics, thinkers, technical people, whatever we are, um, I definitely, my retirement will definitely have a lot of programming in it or building objects of whatever form. I don't think I've learned a bit about gardening. I don't think gardening is that object that I would build. I think it would probably be something. Um, yeah, there's lots of mathematics, or maybe it'll be reinforcement learning with gamma equals 1.
So it's beginning to sound like a lot of the same.
It might be a lot of the same, but it'll be a lot of the same, but um, with a much lower turnaround time on emails.
Sure. Would you want a much lower turnaround time with emails? Like I would imagine that retirement is the ability to say, I'm done with emails.
Oh, that was sure. Yeah. Sorry, zero emails would work too. But you want your emails to your collaborators, and you're mailing your pamphlets around the world with your latest crazy idea. And by the way, of course, I said 60 as an interesting point. I don't know what age one retires, but yeah, I've got one or two projects that I'd really like to see done, and I'm sure after those there'll be more. And then when they're all done, there'll probably be more.
Do you generally think about the future on a 5 to 10 year horizon?
It's funny because that's such a risky. 5 to 10 years means I don't know, right? It's like the key word for I don't know. So one thing I love about so the big projects that I've been involved in or close to, body tracking for Connect. Here's one that I was totally not involved in, but I just think is amazing, which is the head tracking for HoloLens. And for both of those, if you'd asked us, I mean, for Connect, they literally did ask, people like me at Microsoft, how long before we can have the body tracking? And I would say 5 to 10 years. Both of those suddenly flipped from not done, from 5 to 10 years to just done really fast, 2 years, 3 years or something. So I definitely, I tend to think of things I'm pretty sure we could build, right? Which may seem super near term. But it turns out I've learned that it might take 5 years to build them. Right, and many more if you tried to build them on your own, you would take an infinity time. Pardon me, but what I'm getting at is, you have to at some stage actually start trying to close it down, trying to build the thing, and that's the point where 5 to 10 years suddenly becomes 5 years, which may be 3. But you have to stop, and it's not saying the community should not do what the community does, right? Think of ideas, think of benchmarks, follow benchmarks, but at some point you grab that information and just make it work.
And on a closer time horizon, what's your concrete prediction? When do you think the world will open back up post-COVID?
Oh gosh. So a new variant is obviously, to me, the only sort of interesting question here. So Chile is 50% vaccinated or something. Chile's pretty vaccinated now, and they've got a big spike coming in. Remember, raw R, in Britain was like 3 or something, or whatever it was. A 70% effective vaccination takes your raw R to around 1. That's not a good number, right? You want to be around 0.5 or something.
And
so there's a real
significantly less than 1.
Yeah, exactly. Because near 1 is just is too risky. So any new variant, that's bang. So we have to do another vaccine development, another rollout of vaccines, and that's just going to give us another year pretty much exactly the same if new variant catches off, it takes off. We don't know about winter summer really yet. I'm pretty convinced we know about children now. I think children are the same as vaccinated adults, right?
Yeah.
They're essentially, you were back to about, I was talking earlier about human confidence, and maybe so wrong with high confidence, right? Well, I think we had a kind of perfect example, right? We had two vaccines in 4 months ago, Oxford, AstraZeneca, and Pfizer. And their RCTs, right, the highest known standard, blah, 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 reported 70% for Oxford, 90% for Pfizer. Okay, so those are the numbers that we're going to use to decide whether this is worth rolling out. And 70% is just about worth rolling out. So, and yeah, it's the only story we have. So let's do it. Seems quite clear now that the correct number is more like 95% for both. Right. Efficacy, so real world efficacy, and now it's 90%, 95% of what do you mean,
Yeah.
But the point is we were told two numbers, 70 and 90, and now it looks like whatever the true number is, it's kind of the same for both. So
I had not
one
seen
of those was wrong.
I had not seen a study on AstraZeneca that actually pointed to much higher efficacy. I'll follow up with you afterwards.
Sure, yeah. And I may be wrong, but that's what I'm getting from the sort of now the numbers I'm talking about are reductions in hospitalizations, in the UK, say, or in any of the countries where there are large rollouts. So suddenly our RCT with 30,000, 40,000 people is irrelevant, right? And now what's relevant is the 20 million people not coming into hospital. Yeah, so we may need to follow up more on that, but I still think there were two numbers, 70 and 90, at the end, at the end of last summer. Those numbers seem to be closer than they were then. And my point is just that we were using the best possible techniques then, and yet we kind of fixated on the numbers. And of course, you can go back to those studies and see, look, there was the dosage problem with AZ, and there was, there was a whole bunch of stuff that was kind of means that no one lied, no one did a mistake, no one made a mistake. I don't think we understand, enough people understand the underpinnings of p-values well enough. The Gaussian assumptions that are nearby, maybe not exactly there, but just general. But at this stage, I'm talking about something I'm not really qualified to talk about. So but you did ask me about COVID.
Yeah, if you had to make a prediction about the world opening back up.
Yeah, I would just say, it's like, make a plan. It might change. So this summer will be good, Northern Hemisphere, I assume. Just because it was pretty good last summer, and now we have vaccine. But I just think odd things may still happen. So what do? I still book non-refundable holidays for 6 months, or sorry, refundable holidays for 6 months in the future, and keep rolling that.
Do you think there's a point to life in our existence?
Oh no, you don't want to get me on that one, because no, that's too tough. The problem is that if there's only one conclusion you're allowed to draw. The closest I'll get to saying it is that we often talk about saving the planet, right? If humans stopped reproducing, then the planet would be in great shape. So I don't believe in humans as anything particularly special and valuable. I love humans, right? I really enjoy being a human and hanging out with other humans.
Some of my best friends are humans.
That's right. So so I'm all for humans, but I think we think we're a bit fancier than we are.
Okay. What do you find meaning in?
When my brain is happy, that's good, right? It might be happy programming, or it might be happy, skiing, or solving problems, talking nonsense with other humans in the pub, yeah.
And what is some of the best advice that you've gotten or given?
Oh gosh. Best advice. Oh, I've got great ones, and now I can't remember them. Maybe it'll come back to me. I know I have good answers to that. Yeah, the only one that jumps to mind is, it'll be fine.
Coming back to the absolutely positive end of the human spectrum, right? Like you're generally happy, and so it makes sense that the advice that you give is it'll be fine. Like looking at the
Yeah.
positive side of things.
Yeah. That is one. Yeah. I think some variants of what I said earlier about if you don't get a job, assume somebody better got it. Don't assume that somehow, either that someone was against you, or I think just assume the actually here's the thing I do actually say all the time, which is hope for the best, plan for the worst. Assume things will be fine, just know what you're going to do if they're not.
By the way, I really liked your insight of zero sumness can, if you trust the system, zero sumness can mean that the right decision was made, that someone else was actually much more deserving. That's an interesting mindset, and it can give you a certain sense of peace and solace.
Exactly. It may be wrong. You may be, I may have been a better person for that job, but I don't think a terrible mistake was made. Or that time our paper was rejected. It's not a terrible mistake. It hurts, and people said things that you think. But I mean, back to papers, right? If the reviewers didn't understand what you were trying to do, honestly, it's the author's responsibility to excite, engage the reader. And you might say, well, this reviewer is willfully not being engaged by my, but it's like, if I tell you a hilarious joke and you don't find it funny, then, I should tell you a better joke, or I should, find some friends who do like my terrible jokes. I'm sorry, I can't remember any puns.
And coming back to the thing that we talked about, don't blame the player, blame the game.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And then if you can change the game, of course, that's great. If you can think about it.
So why did you agree to do this interview with me?
Oh, that's interesting. I love seeing the personalities of the people we work with, and in-person conferences or a time when you meet people, but you don't get, you get much more detail from here of what the people are like. And so that was that. Yeah, and I guess I also, I was sort of interested to see what my answers would be. I'll play this back and think, oh, really? Do I think that?
That's an interesting one. You're almost doing this for your future self, that you can look back and.
Yep, let's see. I'll probably be terribly embarrassed, as I mentioned earlier, saying stupid stuff. So
yeah. And those were all the questions I had for you. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about an aspect of your life that we didn't cover that you think we should mention?
I don't think so. Yeah, we kept fabulously clear of vision, computer vision topics. Or I mean, well, yeah, aside from ranting on about optimization and so on. But yeah, no, I think this was just, it's fun to, I mean, a huge honor to be asked. Thank you.
No, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, fun to see what, the next, I've seen what a lot of the earlier people have said. So, let's roll it on.
All right. We will look forward to, if you think of a pun offline, do let us know of an example.
I'll send you an email and you can,
and I'll link it in. Thank you again for doing this, Andrew.
Thank you, Dhruv. Pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.